Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Nicole, and I'm the Director of External Relations and Expansion here at the Policy Circle. And as many circle leaders on this call probably know, I also work with our state leadership councils. Before I hand it over to Judy Willard to lead our conversation today, I want to go over just a few things in case you're new to Zoom. So we are recording this conversation. Please turn off your notifications on your computer or phone by accessing your network preferences. You are all currently muted, so if you would like to participate during the Q&A, you will notify me by clicking on the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. I will then unmute you and call on you by name to ask your question. If you've joined by phone, you can push *9 to activate the raise hand feature. You may also submit your questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your viewing screen, and then I can ask your question for you. I'd now like to introduce one of my colleagues, Judy Willard. Judy is the Circle Membership Director at the Policy Circle. She is your main point of contact on how to effectively use the Policy Circle platform and engage other women. She holds a bachelor's degree in communications with a concentration in radio and television, and she does like to say that she is your biggest cheerleader. So welcome everybody, and I'll turn it over to you, Judy.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you everybody for joining us on how to interact with the media. We would really like to demystify this process because interacting with the media is not just for a few powerful people or the likes of the Kardashians. Your opinion matters. And so we're going to break down the process for you so that you can be impactful and your voice can be part of the larger narrative that the media is creating. So I'm so excited to introduce two of our guests today because they are the opposite side of the same coin. We've got Emily Ramshaw, who is part of the media, and we've got Deana Bass-Williams, who is somebody who gets media for her clients. So I'm going to start with Emily Ramshaw. She is the co-founder and CEO of The 19th. It is a news publication with the goal to empower women, especially those historically underserved by American media. She is also the youngest person ever to be named to the board of the Pulitzer Prize. She is a native of Washington, D.C. She graduated from Northwestern University with dual degrees in journalism and American history. So give us a wave, Emily. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And Deana Bass-Williams is also a circle leader, so woohoo. She is co-founder of Bass Public Affairs and holds a BA in Communications and International Relations from Salem College, where she served on the Board of Trustees for 12 years, and she holds a master's in film production from Ohio University. And in addition to her national media relations experience, she has served as press secretary and spokesperson for a number of congressmen and women, and has served as deputy chief of staff to Dr. Ben Carson in his role as secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And you can read both of their full bios in the chat box, but they're so amazing and awesome, I had to like shorten it for time's sake. So in the chat box will be their full bio. So Emily and Deana, thank you so much for being on the call today. We're so happy to have you here. Emily, I'm going to start with you because there's a big news piece happening soon about the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And I think it would be helpful for our circle leaders to understand your inspiration and vision of the 19th, because you are the type of person we are encouraging them to reach out to. So give us the mission and vision of the 19th.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the 19th, we first conceived of this idea, honestly, 4 years ago. I was on maternity leave with a tiny daughter and was sort of thinking about the media landscape and whose voices were elevated and whose voices weren't elevated, and really trying to think about ways to bring a greater parity for women into the media landscape. And I mean women on all sides of the aisle, all ideological backgrounds. I think living in Texas, where I am, covering the legislature here in Austin, which is a super, liberal community, but covering one of the most conservative state legislatures in the country, which I did in Texas for the last 10 years. I really felt like there were so many areas where women were great at working together and that those stories were not getting elevated. So that was part of the rationale for us to launch the 19th. Again, I had a small baby, so 4 years ago wasn't a great time. But this year, on the centennial of the 19th Amendment, giving most women the right to vote, we decided we would launch the 19th, a brand new nonprofit, truly nonpartisan news platform aimed at giving all women a place to get more deeply engaged engaged in politics and policy. So again, what that looks like for us is storytelling that really aims to elevate the voices, particularly of women of color, women off the coasts, women who are not used to seeing themselves represented in a lot of legacy media. So that's the goal for us. I'm really thrilled to be participating in this conversation, and I hope we hear all of your voices reflected in our journalism.
Thank you for that, Emily. That's really exciting. And I watched a documentary last night about the suffrage movement, and
yes, on PBS, I bet, right?
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I was like ashamed of myself that I didn't know more, basically, and I'm going to make my daughters watch it too. So, Deana, you have garnered a lot of media attention for your clients. Can you share an approach that has worked and maybe give us the inside jargon? So if we're ever at a cocktail party, we know, and journalists, if we're talking to journalists, we know things like earned media, paid media, because those are things that most of us don't really understand or know. So.
Sure. Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share in this webinar. I love the Policy Circle. My sister and business partner, Dee Dee Bassett-Wilbon, I think she's on as well. We are Policy Circle leaders in the DC area, and we have been blessed by this organization. So thank you for giving me the chance to be a part of this today's circle. And so, yes, there is some jargon that might be helpful when you're beginning, and that there are three types of media that I think it's important for you to be aware of. That's earned media, owned media, and paid media. And so the most coveted type of media, people would probably say, is earned media. And I think, Emily can certainly attest that is like when we create buzz for our clients, we want people like Emily to notice and then to want to write about us. And so, so the earned media space is probably where you, it's the media that you want most, but you can also create large platforms of your own in your owned media space. And so that could be everything from your, in some cases, your social media is your owned media space, but also newsletters that you create, podcasts that you create, you actually own the content. So that's owned media. And we really encourage clients to develop their owned media, which makes them more attractive to journalists when they're pitching their stories in the earned media space. And then of course there is paid media, and that means if you pay for it, then they'll place it. So that's probably the easiest. It can be expensive. It can be as inexpensive as Twitter and posting ads on Facebook and those platforms. But I think it is important for people to understand those three different types of media: earned media, owned media, and paid media.
I better unmute myself, or I'm not going to be a very good facilitator. So can you give me a, like an approach that has worked for you and your clients in the past, getting them attention or media?
Sure. And I think, first of all, I think it's also very important to understand who you are or in our case, who our client is. For example, when we're working with someone like Dr. Carson, I could call a press conference in the next 30 minutes on any corner in America, and I can get media to come and cover him, right? But we also work with people who are not as well known as a Secretary Ben Carson or Dr. Carson. I think it's important for people to understand who their client is and what their comfort level is. Not everyone is comfortable on camera. Not everyone is comfortable even on radio. We have to be aware of our ums and audio tics, right? And so sometimes it may be identifying that your client or you are more comfortable telling a story, writing an op-ed. So understanding who your client is, in this case, who you are and what your comfort level is. So we recommend people also understanding the different layers of media. There's, obviously everyone wants to be on primetime cable news networks at, 7 to 9 o'clock at night. But there are also large platforms in the blog world, podcast world that also offer great opportunities, large platforms for your clients or for you. And it also gives you, you can identify your level of comfort in those different media platforms.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Emily, thank you for that, Deana. It makes me start thinking, oh, maybe I need to pay more attention to the space that I'm in, the Facebook, the Twitter, I don't think we really think about that as an opportunity for us to grow our own sphere of influence. But it's a great place to practice, I guess, right? So Emily, can you give our circle leaders tips on how to establish a relationship with a local editor? Because I think that, we're real big about establishing relationships first with lawmakers, with, anybody we are trying to influence. So help us navigate that.
Sure. Well, I would say the fact that you're starting with the word relationship is really the right place to start. I mean, we see as journalists just a barrage of press releases. People, you believe it or not, still fax us a lot of things. We get so many emails in our inbox that are obvious story pitches, and we have next to no time, particularly in regional media, where you've seen sort of this degradation of, these staffs are so much smaller than they used to be. There's no sort of general collection box where people are waiting for your email that's going to give them a great story idea. So I always suggest that the best way to do this is to start with building relationships. And that sounds so simple, but in the new world order, but before COVID, I really responded well to either a PR person or a private citizen saying, writing me an email that said, "Hey, I'm so-and-so. I just would love to get to know you. I really respect the work that you all do. I'd love to find ways that we could work together in the future. Would you have time for just a 20-minute cup of coffee? And if not, could I just show up at your office for 10 minutes to introduce myself?" Getting this shouldn't matter, but knowing that somebody has 2 kids at home who are the same ages as your kid, or knowing that you have gone to the same summer camp, or knowing that you have anything in common, makes you want to have a relationship and help that person out. I also think, obviously in this COVID era, we are doing a lot of Zoom calls like this, people saying, can I get 5 minutes of your time by Zoom just to make an introduction, to tell you a couple of things that I'm working on that I think you or your journalists might have an interest in? We are super receptive to that, believe it or not. And then I think the final piece is, do your homework. Make sure you're going to an organization that really might have an interest in something that you're doing. Make sure that there's a brand fit. If someone comes to us with just a general pitch, I work for an organization focused on women, politics, and policy. If you're coming to me trying to get me to write about the new faux leather tote bag that you are, distributing, that's not going to be something that we're going to be even remotely interested in. And I can't tell you how many of those pitches we get every day. So building the relationships, and then coming to us, like I said, we're all short on time. So the other big strategy, I think, is to come to us with potential great sources already in mind. If you're pitching a story about what this COVID era means for women in the workplace, who are trying to navigate, balancing their childcare and in-home schooling of their kids with keeping your day job, write me a note or start a conversation that says, I have 3 incredible women you're going to want to talk to. Here are their names. Here's a sentence or 2 on their experiences. You're getting me part of the way there if you tell me not just why something matters, but hit me with the empathy notes. Tell me why I should care about the women or the issue whose experiences you're trying to elevate.
That is good. That's huge. And I have so many thoughts running through my head, but Deana, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I want to say, I think that it's so important to hear both sides of this, because Emily is, as Judy said, you're the journalist. I'm the person trying to get my clients to you to pay attention to my clients. And we have such an urge, a desire to just tell, we're buddies now, and I want to share all of my clients with you, but not every one of my clients will match the 19th, right? And so sometimes, even in a space where you've built the relationship with the reporter, and we, over the course of, 2.5 decades of doing this, we've built wonderful relationships with reporters, but you know what? It's not in my best interest to share, even my friends who are in the business, if it's not their beat, don't share it with them. They'll love you, but you'll annoy them, right? So build a relationship, but stick to the topic, the area that they cover. So I completely agree with Emily, and I sometimes probably will have to apologize because there's this urge to just share everything because you know them. So I think that's hugely important. I'll also say in the op-ed space and letters to the editor, make sure that you are looking at their requirements, like the things that they say. If they say that their op-eds are 600 words and you have written a 700-word op-ed, and you know that those extra 100 words are so great and you can't cut them because you're just the best, and they said 600. So You gotta cut it. You know, it's like, and we're passionate about the subjects that we care about, but you really have to stick to, they know what they want. If they say that they want an attachment, send them an attachment. If they want the piece in the body of the email, send it in the body of the email. So make sure that you definitely understand, what they're asking for, and give them what they are asking for. Also, I will say this really quickly. To Emily's point, she's getting so much email. Make it as easy for her as possible. If you're writing an op-ed that has a lot of sources, 18 million jobs created, 3, whatever the numbers are, whatever the stats or whatever those sources are, make sure that you at least hyperlink or give them the reference, so that if they want to cover it, they don't have to do all the legwork to fact check what you've already included in the article, or in the op-ed. So, if you have high-res photos, anything that can make it easier for them, make it easier. They have a whole lot. You're not the only one that's sending them an email today. So do what you can to make their work easier.
That's a good thing to remember, because I think sometimes we all tend to think that whatever we're working on today is the only thing that's important. And then we aren't empathetic to the fact that Emily is getting 1,000 emails and being inundated with information. So, Deana, what are some ways that circle leaders can make their perspective heard in the media? Like you talked about the earned media and the paid media. What's the best way for them, really, without somebody like you to help them place stuff?
I really do think it really boils down to identifying the appropriate outlets. Like there are thousands of places for you to share your story, to share your content. So, and Emily has pointed out this again, and I just can't impress upon you how important it is to identify the appropriate outlet, the appropriate audience, and again, back to what I said before about their specs, the things that they actually want to have covered. So, and also we have to have, for us at Bass Public Affairs, we always say attack policy, not people. So we encourage people to make sure that they are, like, in their writing, in their content, in their stories, that they are, if it's a policy related issue, whatever the content is, to actually be an expert in it, or to be, even if you're not an expert in that space, to be knowledgeable and interesting enough that somebody wants to write about you. My mom will cover anything that I do. And Judy, this, like, if there's, like, everything that I write is worth reporting, but that's not so much the case with everything, right? So we have to make ourselves interesting enough for people to want to cover us.
I would just add one thing to that I think is a really interesting point. We in the media are often looking not for the noisiest voice, we're looking for real people. And I think part of the challenge, with issues, so we can talk about clients, but we can also talk about issues. It is super helpful for us to hear from people who say, hey, are you looking for a really remarkable conservative woman to talk about issues X, Y, and Z? Because I have got some great people for you. We are, we default to the noisiest voices, the pundits, the talking heads. You'll see the same experts quoted over and over and over again on issues where a lot of people, real people, have very nuanced takes. And so I'd say finding outlets like that, even providing yourself or the women in your networks as people who could speak honestly and candidly about particular issues, is exceedingly valuable to the media.
I love that.
And I also just want to add, like Emily's outlet, and we will be reaching out to you, Emily. Emily's outlet, and there are a number of others that we sometimes, that we call kind of this affinity market that we overlook, but they are hugely important. And in the African American community, there are outlets like NNPA, the National Newspaper Association, and the Hazel Trice-Edney Newswire. These are outlets that everyone from the judge to the people who work in the custodial system read in the African American community. They're everywhere throughout the African American, and in some cases the Hispanic community as well. And identifying, like, not creating a media list that is inclusive. Sometimes these outlets are much easier to penetrate because they are smaller. Sometimes they're weekly, and sometimes they because their staffs are smaller, sometimes they need the content. So not just pitching the Washington Post and the New York Times, but also these outlets where, like, the suffrage issue is something that my sister and I are passionate about. So we will consume everything that you produce, right? And so there are people who are naturally geared towards those avenues. And so if that's your audience, then it makes sense to go there.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to tell you a funny story at the end about me being on the media. So I'm just going to ask this. Okay, so both of you, I want to know, what mistakes have you seen people make when they try to interact or engage with people working in the media organizations? That might be kind of fun to know, so we don't make the same mistake.
I mean, mine are, I'm sure Deana has heard these all the time, but I would say, the nonstop barrage of press releases, especially if we've said no, don't keep coming back to us over and over again with the same pitch. Absolutely don't be rude if a journalist says this doesn't fit in our coverage area right now, because you do that one time and we never take you seriously again. And you'd be surprised at how often that happens, that people are angry that you didn't accept their pitch. So I'd say those are the two sort of big mistakes that you can make. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with those, and I would also add just being honest and truthful. Not creating content that is just false. You'll be found out and you will look ridiculous, and people like Emily will never trust you and will not want to cover your story or organization. So definitely not even little exaggerations, but just tell the truth, and that goes back to what Emily's talking about in terms of authenticity, just like be a real person, tell the truth. And also, I think that, good manners, just good manners.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been thinking about, I'm in a weird position because I'm actually on both sides of this issue right now, because I'm running a newsroom where we're accepting pitches, but we're also getting ready to launch the 19th officially this summer, and I'm in the business of trying to get earned media about what we're doing. And one thing that I think has been an interesting approach, and just something to think about always, is newsworthiness. What moment are you living in? So, we're launching a startup aimed at giving women greater opportunity in news during a global pandemic where women are hardest hit, and particularly, working moms. And so how could I pitch the story of the 19th through the lens of us launching a startup with me trying to stiff arm a 4-year-old, while my husband's got headphones on working in the office, right? And then, we enter this sort of, modern day, what I hope is a modern day civil rights movement. And, we're still telling stories about the 19th, but the stories we're telling right now are our newsroom is almost entirely women of color. Beyond me, our leadership team is entirely women of color. What does it mean to be building an organization that's almost entirely women of color in this moment when we're grappling with these issues? It may not be just me pitching the 19th. It may be framing the 19th through the lens of the moment we're living in. And that's, I think, another way to think about getting your message out is make it timely, make it newsworthy.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. What should our circle leaders be ready for if they do get an op-ed published, or they're asked for their opinion on the news? And they're going against the grain. So let's say their op-ed is maybe a little bit against the grain. What should they be ready for?
We always work with our clients to create, before we create op-eds or content, we do what we call messaging guidance, and it gives us an idea of the pros and cons of issues so that we can just be prepared to ask, we ask them the tough questions. So, but we do take on clients in 3 areas. We say clarity, courage, and competence. So if you're clear about the issue, like if this is an issue that you are passionate about, so that's the clarity. Courage, so sometimes you actually have to have courage to tell the story. So plant your feet and tell the story. And then competence, and that really is knowing what you're talking about. So as we're creating messaging guidance for people, we like to frame it in, with those 3 points. I would also say that it is important to practice, to practice answering the tough questions, and also understanding that there actually may be, it's not going to always be my mom asking me the questions, right? So have those people who will challenge you. And also, one thing that's unique about writing op-eds in this climate, or placing op-eds in this climate, is oftentimes when you place an op-ed, that's an opportunity for you to garner earned media in other areas. So if I place an op-ed with the Washington Post, then maybe Fox or MSNBC will want to talk to me about, or talk to the client about that op-ed. So that the actual op-ed placement could be an avenue for even more media.
Yeah, wonderful, thanks. Do you have anything to add to that, Emily?
Just that the drills are really important. I mean, when we launched the 19th, our soft launch in January, we did, several days worth of drills of, what are the hardest questions we could be asked and how would we answer those questions, and practice in particular around sensitive topics. Practice getting asked questions about race, practice getting asked questions about inclusivity, practice being asked questions about LGBTQ issues. I mean, I think you never know the direction the conversation will take, and you want to be prepared. You want to use the right terminology, no unforced errors.
This really sounds like a fun project for policy circles to do together. I mean, really, because this is something that circle members can be, we can be supporting each other and asking each other the tough questions and practicing with each other. So I want the two of you to hold on, because we are going to open it up for questions very soon. But right now we are going to do an op-ed tutorial. So it's the part of the programming where we actually give our circle leaders some meat and potatoes to take home with them. So we will have resources for you so that you can write your own op-ed, that sort of thing. So to lead us in this adventure is going to be Mary Shaper, who is our Director of Communications at the Policy Circle. She has more than a decade of experience in public affairs, developing and executing integrated communication strategies and digital campaigns for trade associations, nonprofits, political campaigns, and on Capitol Hill. She was born and raised in Texas. She made her way to Alaska before heading to DC, where she now lives with her family, and she's in the middle of potty training. So, give her some kudos. So she's going to be working with Tamara Edwards, who is also a circle leader, and she was instrumental in helping the Policy Circle place op-eds last year. Tamara is the founder and principal of Tamara Edwards and Company. She has spent the last 7 years working on a variety of high-profile campaigns and arranging local, state, and national media appearances. Her clients and employers have included well-known philanthropists, global business entrepreneurs, industry leaders, members of the U.S. Congress, and more. So Mary, take it away.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Deana and Emily, for your perspectives. I feel like I'm learning so much just in the last 20 minutes. So building on that, we at the Policy Circle want to provide each of our circle leaders with the tactical tools for you to be able to take action in your communities. So today, like Judy said, Tamara is going to walk us through some best practices for writing an op-ed or a letter to the editor. And then we have a template that we've actually created that makes it very easy. Plug and play. You can kind of fill in your name, your information, and that'll at least get you started, especially if this is the first time that you're writing a piece like this. And we'll be emailing that out to everybody after the call. So Tamara led an initiative for the Policy Circle last year, creating a series of op-eds. Most of them were on the Policy Circle framework and our forum for thoughtful, fact-based conversations on the issues. And we also had a couple of those op-eds that were focused on key issues from circle leaders. They were able to offer their perspectives and then ways to get involved and take action. One in particular from a circle leader in LA was focused on homelessness. So she was able to, talk through that and how it was impacting her and the community. So when you're placing an op-ed like this, like Deana and Emily mentioned, there are certain characteristics and formats that you need to follow to make sure that they are published and so that your voice and your perspective is heard. So Tamara, thank you for joining us. Where do we start if this is the first time that we're ever writing an op-ed?
Yeah, so really, Deana talked about media guidance. I think every publicist or everybody on this call, every circle leader, you are already your own sort of media channel, right? And I think through the media guidance, what they're talking about, whether their infrastructure is the same or not as what we do here at TE & Co, A lot of it is through conversation that sort of comes up. So that's where we start in the process, at least for our clients and what we've done for the policy circle. So we sort of really facilitate, I don't want to say ghostwrite, but we just facilitate that process for our clients. And this is what we did again for policy circle leaders last year. I just pulled up our press archive from last year, and we were in, for the op-ed project specifically, St. Louis Business Journal, Sylvie was on WGN Radio, City Watch LA, Dia El Dia, Lake Forest Leader, just some great publications for the policy circle members to be exposed to, and vice for folks to be exposed to the policy circle. So starting with point of view, we all have a point of view. Now, the question I always ask to start is, what do you want to talk about? What are some things that you wish people asked you about? If you had the chance to go straight into publication, forget all these steps for a second, throw out the rule book, what do you want to talk about, right? So write that down, right? Have conversations with people in your network. What comes up again and again? Are you starting that conversation? Is your community having that conversation, right? And do some research around that. That's really the first piece. What do you care about? And what do you want to put your name behind, right? Because we're going to go into publication. And then you start building your outline. Mary mentioned, I don't know if it's coming from Judy or Mary, but we're going to be sharing, we built a template for the policy circle, which is very basic, an op-ed outline. Start adding some body and structure. Point of view, outlined, right? There's probably a larger point of view you want to get across, and then subcategories to help further your narrative. It might be personal, it might be research, it might be, firsthand experience or something you've seen, but shape that narrative, build some structure. And this is all very simple. It's almost like, again, just a template. Just keep it really easy in the beginning, because people might get overwhelmed. Am I going to be in the press? Being in the press or raising your profile is going to have side effects, not consequences, side effects. You're starting a conversation. So you need to be researched, because people are going to be asking follow-up questions, right? And then just start writing. I say, let the pen go. And if you're not a writer, it's okay. Just get down all your thoughts, whether you journal, or I even tell some of my clients, record what you said, send it to me. We will transcribe that and send that right back to you with a little bit more body, right? We do this in volume, so we're pretty good at it. So, it's really just a basic, what am I saying? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Let me write it down, put some body behind it. So I'm on number 3 here. So just start writing. And when you get to what you think is a good first draft, I do this. I need this even for my own personal stuff. Everybody needs an editor. So run it by other people, run it by your fellow policy circle members, run it by your friends or your colleagues, and ask for their feedback. There might be someone who's really good at grammar that might help you out. There might be someone who's really passionate about this issue, on one side or the other, and they're going to be able to help you out. Talk about it with them. Really just focus group this one idea, and then edit and refine. I had a project last year. Sorry about that. I had a project last year that took almost 9 months to get it out. And when we got it out, it was national. So this doesn't have to be a quick 1-2 step. Sometimes it takes time, and it might take time for you to sit there as a strategist and resonate on some of these ideas to go further, or maybe do some more research, or maybe something else needs to happen to push you to the other side. And as Emily mentioned and Deana mentioned, you want to pick the right publication. Chances are, if you're starting off something in your local community, you want to go straight to something like a letter to the editor or something local. They're going to listen to you first, right? As a PR firm, I do national bookings. I have quite a few clients all around the country. I'm based here in Chicago. Very rarely do I get national stories, because I'm not pitching them. I don't often sit on national stories. I always start with local and community, and then move up to industry and move up to state, and then figure out how it impacts the national landscape, right? But you want to start local. So type in your town name in the Google search, and see who's going to come up, right? Who's covering your area. They're going to want to hear from you first. Check the requirements. There's probably things like deadlines. We only take them on the 15th. We only take a volume. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of work, everyone, right? It's okay. You want to put in the work because you want to get it right. This is all very simple if you just follow the steps. So those requirements might be 600 words, like Deana mentioned. You're going to want to cut down your 700 word. Save that version, right? You're just going to pitch it out. Chances are you're probably not going to hear back the first time. So you have to have a plan and that resilience in your mind. Being a publicist is, and I'm not complaining, it's hard work. The batting average is pretty low for how much we send out. And again, about building those relationships. Call them up, call the local paper, call the business journal in your area, call the industry publication. Let them know what you're doing. If that's not, you're going to call, you're going to email, everything. And that information should be available on the website, especially with the local publications. If you're not sure, call them. Email the hello at or info at. You have to kind of start weeding your way in and take notes here. I know Sylvia's a big fan of Google Docs. I'm a big fan of Google Docs. Track that all in one place. So all this information is in one place so it doesn't feel overwhelming or unorganized. And then moving to number 5, just move that message. Pitch your op-ed to a few people. Email it to a few friends and ask them to pass it along, right? It's not just PR that we're trying to earn, which is very important, but you want to share your message. So feel free to share it on direct engagement in your immediate audience. Share it on your social, LinkedIn articles, Medium, even Facebook are for longer form, great places to send people, right? And share your findings along the way. It doesn't necessarily only have to be this op-ed is what you put out into the world, right? This is a content strategy, sort of all built in one. And then submit and don't stop. And, us as publicists, Deana, I know that we're resilient, right? Again, it's a low batting average. This is fun work, and there's processes that we follow for our clients to find success. So we do this in volume, and this is right here in front of you exactly what we do. So I don't know, Mary, if you want to add anything to that or anything that I didn't mention.
No, I think that's great. I did want to share can everyone see the op-ed outline? And this is something that we'll be sharing with everybody out after the call. And Tamara, you can expand on this if you want to.
Oh yeah.
This is a good framework of how to kind of get started on an op-ed.
Yeah, this is invented by what we found on the Google machine, and you could find this too, right? This isn't proprietary to myself or the Policy Circle. This is basic outline. I think in high school or even in middle school, we all were asked to do this at some point, right? So what's your hook? How are you going to build that narrative? What's your hook? How are you going to build that narrative? A great way to get great at op-eds is to just spend some time reading op-eds. Find your favorite publication, like the 19th. Check out some things that they've published that seem like editorial focused and start reading them. And that'll help you create your own sort of body and structure. The only thing I do, right, especially with last year with the Policy Circle, leading up to the summit, we wanted to create awareness. We wanted to, create buzz around the Policy Circle nationally. Again, we didn't ghostwrite. We didn't make anything up. We didn't just write something and say, hey, Judy, it's got your name on it. Happy day. We listened to what the members had to say, transcribed what they had to say. We asked some questions, kind of had some back and forth on the editing side. And it all started with this document here. Again, just fill in the blanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's, one of the things that I also wanted to mention, I have from experience that, there are many elected officials that pay close attention to those local papers. When Tamara was talking about local, it's what popped in my head. But, so these tips are very helpful in making sure that your voice is out there, especially in those local papers, which is where I think most of our circle leaders would be, trying to pitch or place. Because that's where, you're going to make the most impact with your perspective. So thank you, Tamara. We very much appreciate it. If you have any questions on this process, please feel free to reach out to me. communications@thepolicycircle.org is the best way to do that. We can help you through the process or make sure that you have access to the template and everything. Back to you, Judy.
Thank you so much, Tamara and Mary, for doing that. And I know that we do have one question. Nicole, we've got a question for Deana. Is that right?
We have a few questions. I'm going to try to go. We had a couple pre-submitted questions as well, so I'll kind of bounce around here a little bit. Jillian Burns, who is a circle leader and on the Illinois State Leadership Council, asked a really interesting question I have not thought about before. How do you manage your brand through a name change? So maiden name versus your married name, which is obviously almost exclusively a woman's issue to deal with. Any suggestions from you all?
I have recently, in the last 3 years, had to manage through a name change. At the age of 44, I became Bass Williams. no hyphen. So that made it even more complicated. And I had spent obviously most of my career as Deana Bass. And so for us, what we have done is first of all, we never closed old accounts, like, because we just can't risk people emailing Deana Bass at Bass Public Affairs and not having it come there. But so in my personal space, the actual name from Deana Bass to Deana Bass Williams, I wish that I could give you some good advice, but I have none. I really don't. But as it relates to the company name, we actually did change. We started out Bass Public Affairs has been around for 13 years. Our first 3 years, we did have a different name, and in that, because it had not been as long, we did everything from a very, very strong push in social media. We had events, our branding, which is a dragonfly. You will never ever see me or my sister without the Bass Public Affairs dragonfly with us, and now people see it all the time, and they'll text us a picture of a dragonfly, people that we don't even know. So for us in our company, with the name change, we made sure that in everything, in every way, we communicated the new name and the new logo and the new brand, and that has been, for us, that we feel like it's been successful. But it is something that you have got to be relentless about and obnoxious about. And I don't correct people when they mispronounce my name and it's actually Deana. This is like probably the first time in 2 years that I've done that, but I always correct people if there's an issue with the new brand of Bass Public Affairs. So
thank you. Yeah, I think it's just have to be strategic about it. It sounds like.
Can I add to that, Nicole? Just one thing. So
your company name is also.
If it's a divorce, for me, I've advised one of my clients who's going through a divorce right now, and she is going to go through a last name change. If that's the experience, I just said, just do it and don't say anything to anyone. And if they ask, then they're bold enough to ask, then you can answer based on your relationship. If it's a business choice or change or something like that, I always say, if you're experiencing any stage of growth, do a photo shoot and act like, just make that segue very clear. Just like Deana said, just, be out there and be loud about it. So it starts to they start to forget almost immediately about the old name.
All right, very good. Jasmina Hauser, circle leader in Illinois, wanted a recap on what is earned media and how do you get it, which I know could be a whole program, but maybe just a recap on earned media. And I think the op-ed template might be a good first step in terms of maybe getting earned media.
And I'll answer that just really quickly and then toss it to Emily, because she's the one who we're trying to get earned media from. And so for us, I'm so excited I get to use my show and tell. Do y'all remember these old things? Let's consider this like the press. This is like an old phone. My husband bought this for me. I love it. So this is like an old phone handle. So we're going to consider this the press release, which is an old tool that we have. Emily's talking about people faxing her press releases, and some people think that there's always the question, has the press release died? And so I don't believe that it has, no more than I believe this type of phone has died, but you have to transform it to something new. Like, so you take the old press release and you put it on, you kind of jazz it up with things like Cision, Meltwater, services that help you develop media lists, and you kind of turbocharge your press release, right? And so you also turbocharge your press release with what Emily has talked about, relationships, with what Tamara is talking about in the space of the op-ed. So there has to be like a first level of communication. Some people are uncomfortable doing what Emily's talking about, like calling up and reaching out. I think that's why I have my sister, because she's the one who'll just call reporters and, hey, let's do coffee. I'm so not that person. But I will write a very nice press release that has all of the points, or a media advisory with all of the information that's necessary. And then I feel comfortable following up with a phone call. Like, hey, I sent you a press release, frame of reference. And so earned media is the media that you earn when your press release or your phone call or your story is interesting enough. And so, so if the question is how do you garner earned media, that is why Tamara says you have to be relentless, and we have to be like PR people, have to be bold, and it's in volume. And for every one pitch that we make, let's not talk about all the ones that land flat, but when you take this ordinary press release and turbocharge it with something like Cision, where you have access to thousands and thousands of reporters, then you have a better chance of success. And also, but if you don't have the budget for something like a Cision or a Meltwater, also Google. I mean, Google is amazing. Like you said, I can't remember who said it earlier, but type in a subject. We have Google alerts on everything, right? So type in a subject, identify who's covering these issues, and target them. Someone in the comments said, don't, like Alex Sawyer, everyone loves Alex Sawyer at the Washington Times. She's one of our friends, but we're not going to bombard Alex with content that is not related to what she's talking about. But if you're able to narrow it down through Google or Cision or Meltwater, then it makes it a lot easier.
All right, very good. I think we got to wrap up. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of our questions, but you know, Judy, are you ready to wrap it up?
I am. I'm going to put up a poll, ladies, and while I'm kind of closing out, I wanted to, you know, obviously thank you all for participating, helping us do this special training just for our circle leaders, because we appreciate the hard work all of the circle leaders do to educate and inspire the women around them. I want to encourage all of you to log into the website so you get all of the resources that we are creating for you so that you can be impactful. And please remember, when you host your policy circle meeting, to please post a recap afterwards, because that's how we build our stories about you and how impactful you are being. And I think it would be a wonderful idea to have this be a policy circle meeting, and maybe as a policy circle group, you can decide to tackle an op-ed and maybe get placed in your local paper or something to that effect. And on a fun note, July 29th, save the date. We have a really cool webinar coming up. We are hosting the documentary filmmaker, Christopher Rufo. He has done a film called America Lost. So we are going to ask all of our members and supporters to watch that movie prior to the July 29th webinar. And we are going to be trying something special. We want this to be a very interactive webinar. So we are going to be breaking up into breakout rooms of 8 to 12 people. So you are going to have the opportunity to meet other circle leaders and members and supporters from across the nation. And we are going to work it out so that Christopher actually pops into the room and gets to talk to you guys on a more personal basis. So be looking for that film to watch, because we want to give you time to watch the film before July 29th. And if you need any help executing and planning your policy circle meetings, we do have new membership levels that might be of interest to you. So those will be in our email recap that we send to you, and the letter, the template, so that you can write a letter to the editor. And thank you, ladies, all for being here today with us. Deana, Emily, Tamara, Mary, thank you so much for helping us out, and everybody have a wonderful Wednesday. Bye.